Hello everyone, my name is Kayla and welcome back to Kay's Hidden Shelf where we talk about books. Today I thought we'd have some fun as normally when I'm looking for my next read, I am primarily a mood reader. So I'll go to my shelves, pick out a few books, read a little bit, and then decide which book I want to pick up next. This also applies to my Kindle, but for the purposes of today's video, we're going to keep it to the physical copies on my shelf, and maybe I'll do a dedicated Kindle version down the line, but I thought it'd be fun to pick 10 books off my shelves, get a first impression with all of you, read the first line or two of the book, and then try and decide which book I want to read next based on how that first impression sits. Usually when I'm looking at my TBR and what I want to read, I try and balance a mixture of commitment reads such as buddy reads and review copies, and my personal TBR, which is books that have just caught my eye, found their way to my shelves, and books that I'm just interested in picking up at some point. So today I picked out the ones that have been catching my eye as of late. We're going to go ahead and read the first line or two together, and then we're going to put it in a pile, maybe a possible pile and a not for now pile, because I do plan to read all of these books down the road, but we're just going to be picking one book out of these 10 for me to read next. First, let's dive into Ken Liu's The Paper Menagerie and Other Stories. This is a short story anthology by Ken Liu. I had actually read The Grace of Kings back when I first started this channel, and I fell off the bandwagon. I absolutely love The Grace of Kings, but I struggled with series back then. I still do today, and I'm working on getting better at it. And that's definitely a series I need to restart and continue, but let's take a look at the first impression on this one. And again, how this will work is I will be reading the first line or two and making a judgment call on that. The first short story is called The Bookmaking Habits of Select Species. There is no definitive census of all the intelligent species in the universe. I'm going to put that in the possibly pile, because to me that is thought-provoking, and I am kind of in the mood for something more thought-provoking than adventurous, if that makes sense, but moods can be fickle. So let's dive into the next one, which is Fogbound by N.J. Alexander. Now see, there's a prologue, and prologues are not always true to the rest of the tone of the book, so maybe we'll do a line from the prologue and a line from the chapter and see how that goes. Holant gazed upon the battlefield where his allies fought against the Horde, and thought of how he would soon betray them. Okay. And the first line of chapter 1, Xerxian wrestled his arm free from the chair his baggy sleeve was caught on, careful not to drop the pile of old, crusty books occupying both hands. Yeah, see, different tones there. Not a bad thing at all, because we start off with a different character here, and I'm sure their arc is going to take a different route, but you can't always judge from the prologue, I think, is the point of this. In this case, I think I might put it in not for now, but it is one I am going to read on the channel and one I am looking forward to, but we're mood reading, we're mood picking. So next one is Bright Wash by Crystal Matar. And this one I have heard phenomenal things about over the years, and it's one that has been taunting me on my shelf for a long time, but I've also been wary because I've been told it has some emotional damage, so let's see what the first impression on this one is. It had already been a long, exhausting day when the girl's body washed up on the bank of Bright Wash. See, now I want to know. Possibly. After that, we have The Hunter's Lament by Steve Panett, which I've heard a lot of comparisons to Joe Abercrombie, actually, and I did dip into this back last fall, but I don't remember much of it. I ended up having to put it down and come back to it at a later time, so let's see how the mood is feeling on this one. Okay, so see, this one has a prologue as well, so I might actually jump to chapter 1 in this case just to see. Woodburn drifted into view just as the last of the golden sunshine was sinking into a deep red over the horizon. Torches started to spring to life along the main street, and firelight flickered in the shanty dwellings. throughout the settlement. That feels atmospheric, and I do love atmospheric reads, so this is hard. Why did I do this to myself? I'm going to put it in possibly, and we'll have to whittle that down. After that, we have I Am AI by Ai Jiang. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. I'm very sorry. This is a very small, very short novella, and as you guessed from the title, it is a sci-fi surrounding an AI. So let's read that first opening line. It's becoming difficult and dangerous to ignore my battery's rapid rundown time. At 8%, my memory's functions are diminishing far too quickly. I've forgotten to charge before leaving work again. So while that is interesting, and I'm just continuing on, I can see where the direction of this is going. And I will be reading this again. All of these books I will be reading at some point, but I think I'm going to put this in the not for now, just because it's not catching me as much as those other ones are. The next one is one that I've heard a lot of praise for recently. It came recommended to me by my friend Esme as well, and that is The Silver Blood Promise by James Logan. I went out recently to buy it because of everything I have heard, so let's go look at that first line. The tavern was called the Pathfinder's Gambit, though its patrons referred to it as the Armpit, or simply just the Pit, on account of its stale odor and the fact that its interior rarely saw sunlight. That's another atmospheric one. I do love a decrepit tavern in fantasy stories. Yeah. This is going to have to be the possibly, but why did I do this? Why am I doing this to myself? I'm going to have to whittle that down a lot. Let's keep going. So the next one is After the Dragons by Cynthia Zhang. I apologize if I'm pronouncing that wrong. This was pitched to me as a cozy fantasy, which I absolutely love. I love the cover on this one as well. Talking about first impressions, covers do make an impact, at least for me. And let's go ahead and read that first line. These days, when he's not painting or working, Kai walks and searches for dragons. I love that. That is absolutely whimsical. It's so hard to make a choice based off of the first line. Okay. I do love cozy fantasy, but I think I'm going to put this one in the not for now pile, mainly because, and I might kick myself at the end of this, but mainly because I think I'm looking for something with a bit more chunk to it, which is probably why this stack is all chunky books at the moment. But there will be a time for this one, absolutely. So the next one I want to give a little bit of background because it's a highly anticipated release for me. Grimdark magazine was very kind and generous and sent it my way. And I have been so excited to start it ever since. But again, mood reading makes a difference in my reading experience overall. And so we're going to put it in the pile and see how this first intro goes. But that is In the Shadow of Their Dying by Michael R. Fletcher and Anna Smith Spark, who, of course, is a new favorite author to me as well. And I'm so excited for it. It is shorter. It is a novella, I believe, at about 220 some pages. So let's see what that first line is. Okay, the first line is quite short, so I'm going to do the first few sentences, at least to form a cohesive picture of what's going on here. The third best assassin in Sharam. Who in the pale hells started negotiation with that? Who led with, since you're the third best assassin in the city? Someone about to lowball your rate, Tash decided. That's who. So yes, this is grimdark fantasy with clearly the third-rate assassin of the city. You know, I'm going to put it in the possibly pile because I need a novella in this stack. After that is another novella. I tried to do a balance of thickness on books at least, and that is Night of Crows by Matthew Owen Jones. I adored The Shepherd by this author, and I was very lucky to receive this review copy from him, and it's been sitting on my shelf calling to me, so let's see what that first line is. Antonio Faria knelt, his head bowed in worship. The armor he wore restricted his movements and dug painfully into his flesh, a discomfort he endured as penance for his sins. Now, this one was pitched to me as Diablo meets Templar Knights, which sounds absolutely fascinating. And the tone of it isn't quite catching me the same way the other ones did. Now, I will be reading this absolutely at some point, but I think I'm going to put it in the not for now pile. The next one here is another one that was a review copy. Again, these are ones that have just been catching my eye off my shelves, and that is Oath of Bones by Ryan G. Beatty. And this one, I believe, is a bit more of a dark fantasy, and it looks a little chunkier than it is. The font on this one is pretty generous. And, I have been looking for this bookmark for months. In the pile it goes. So let's see what the first line entails. And we do have a prologue, so I might do a prologue in chapter 1 again. Blistering heat swirled with hot winds in the destitute realm of fiery tornadoes and scorching sulfuric hailstorms. That just sounds like hell. Let's see what chapter 1 says. In the small roadside church dedicated to Zadorov, the god of life and health, just a few miles east of Morstead, the small company of red pardoners began ransacking the food storages. All right, I think I'm going to put it in the not for now pile. It does sound interesting, and I did skim forward a little bit more. And I do think this would be a pretty quick read due to the font size, but it's not quite pulling me the same way the others are, so I will be reading this another time. All right. Let's look at the stack we have, and yay, I found my bookmark. So to review, we have In the Shadow of Their Dying, which is a novella, The Silver Blood Promise by James Logan. We have The Hunter's Lament as well, and The Beast, that is Legacy of the Brightwash by Crystal Matar, and then a short story anthology by Ken Liu. This is going to be a really hard call. And now see, The Hunter's Lament does not seem like a chunky book. It seems like a quick read, but the font on this one is quite small, so it's actually a lot longer than it first appears. First impressions can be tricky, and I think that's why it can take a little while for me to pick my next read, because mood reading and the first impressions of the books that you start aren't always what you expect they'll be as you continue to read. The Hunter's Lament, I think I will do not for now. All right, I've narrowed down 2 more. So The Silver Blood Promise and In the Shadow of Their Dying, I will do as not for now, though I am really excited to dive into both of those. And now it comes down to 2. We have Ken Liu's The Paper Menagerie and Crystal Matar's Legacy of the Brightwash. And I think it's going to be a bit of a hard call because I have heard phenomenal things about both of these. All right, after much consideration, I am going to go with Not for Now for Ken Liu. And I'm probably going to get some flack for this because I know so many people adore this book, but I'm not quite feeling short stories at the moment. I feel like if I start this now, not in the mood for it, I'm going to drop it part way, and that's not what I want to do. So Not for Now, which leaves Legacy of the Brightwash by Crystal Matar as my next read, because that first line was such a hook. And if you don't remember that first line, let's just recap. It had already been a long, exhausting day when the girl's body washed up on the bank of the Brightwash. I need to know, how did that happen? Who was the girl? Who's the culprit? I need answers. So that is what I will be reading next. I'd love to know what your thoughts were on this video. Did you enjoy going through this process with me? Would you have picked a different book than I did? Leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. In terms of this video, I wanted to have a little fun. I wanted to do something a bit different and take you through my own little process of picking my next read when it comes to mood reading. So I hope you enjoyed the chaos, and until next time, thank you so much for watching and take care of yourselves.